Stephen Howard is back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show from In Defense of Christians. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Annie. Good to be with you again.
It is good to have you back. And we've talked a lot about Turkey in recent weeks and months, and really the ever-growing concern that IDC has had with Turkey as a bad actor, particularly when it comes to religious freedom and treatment of Christians in Turkey and elsewhere in the region. Now, I understand you're hosting a policy briefing on this soon. Can you give us the details of that?
Absolutely. We are hosting a policy briefing entitled Christians in Turkey, the Way Forward for Equality and Religious Freedoms. It's going to take place on Tuesday, June 15th. That's a week from today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we are thrilled to have an amazing lineup of speakers, including Dr. Aykan Erdemir, who himself is an exiled member of the Turkish parliament, as well as his wife, Dr. Tuba Erdemir, who in her own right is one of the world's leading experts on Christian cultural heritage. We have David Vergili with the European Syriac Union, who will touch on issues that Syrian, Chaldean, Syriac, Aramean Christians in Turkey face. We have Dr. Ohannes Kilicagi, who will focus on the Armenian population in Turkey, as well as Dr. Elizabeth Prodromou, who will touch on cultural heritage and especially the Byzantine and Greek Orthodox heritage of the country. So we not only have representatives, leaders, and experts in each of the Christian communities that who currently exist in Turkey and who have historically, but we also have folks who are from Turkey themselves, who really appreciate the fact that this is a country with a multi-religious history and who have really staked a lot of their lives and security into fighting for a more tolerant country. So it's sure to be a thrilling conversation.
I'm sure it will be, and I'm looking at the promotional page for this over at indefenseofchristians.org, and you've got 3 photos on here. One is a black and white photo of some soldiers overlooking a bunch of bones and skulls, which I presume to be a picture from the Armenian genocide. And then I see 2 color photos, one of which is a more recent picture of the Hagia Sophia. And then there's another picture of a bearded man standing outside of what looks to be a monastery. Can you tell us what – I want to get to all 3 of these, but can you tell us about that one first, the monastery and the man standing outside of it?
That man is Father Aho Belisian. He is a Syriac Orthodox monk in southeastern Turkey, which is one of the most ancient centers of Christianity in the world. And many of these monasteries there do pray, worship, and preserve Syriac Christianity and Syriac Christian heritage. Unfortunately, in Father Aho's case, a couple of strangers showed up at his monastery door a couple of years ago asking for bread and water, and Father Aho, true to the monastic tradition, provided them with nourishment. Sometime later, the Turkish government claims that those gentlemen were members of the PKK, which is a terrorist organization, despite the fact that the Turkish government has provided no proof to support that claim. And Father Aho has been sentenced to prison for providing bread and water to complete strangers. What is quite likely in this case is that this is really a means to symbolically, it's a symbolic gesture of intolerance toward Turkey's Christian minority. It makes there's no reason in the world why a monk living amongst an endangered ethno-religious community would seek to aid and abet terrorists through bread and water.
Right.
That just is very unlikely. So when we look at the bigger picture here and the larger themes of intolerance that we see in Turkey, it seems that this is a way to symbolically send a message of intolerance toward this small minority community.
So let's talk about the Armenian genocide now. Of course, I know that In Defense of Christians applauded the Biden administration for actually labeling it as a genocide for the first time in United States history. from an official standpoint anyway. What was Turkey's reaction to that? Did they care?
Turkey was very upset. In fact, leading up to that recognition, the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, called President Biden for the first time in his entire presidency. This was pretty shocking. After President Trump had been elected, President Erdogan called him, I think, 3 or 4 days after the election, which is customary when anyone wins an election. It's customary for foreign leaders to call. With President Biden, there was kind of a unique holding off. There was no engagement for months and months until this kind of last-minute plea from Erdogan, where he was basically at the 1-yard line trying to put off sort of one last stand, and he failed in that regard. And not surprisingly, Turkey issued a statement condemning the recognition. And this ties into the briefing in a very interesting way, in that the problem that we're trying to look at here is not that Erdogan is a bad leader. I mean, I think everybody is kind of in agreement that he's taken Turkey in a very dangerous direction. But the reality is these problems of religious freedom, genocide denial, not respecting the cultural heritage of ancient churches and monasteries predates Erdogan by a very long time, by decades. And the reality is, even though Erdogan brands himself as an Islamist, we have seen these same exact issues with nationalists, with secularists, with military leaders. What we're really looking to address here is that there is a problem. There's an ideological problem that lies at the heart of the Republic of Turkey that is off. If you look at Germany after the Holocaust, certainly it took decades to rebuild, but here we are decades later, and it's a relatively moderate and tolerant Western democracy. Mm-hmm. And in Germany, you have to visit a concentration camp just to graduate high school. They're very, very aware of their history, and they have learned from it. Turkey has never acknowledged this genocide and has spent decades and a full century trying to deny it. And they've even rewritten history books and kind of reordered historical events. And so there's massive misinformation campaigns, and there are consequences for that. And how, Turkish citizens themselves, understand their own country. And that's only gotten worse with this current presidency. But we should not forget that, Erdogan would have studied somewhere. Right, he would have been formed somewhere, yeah. Right, and so we have to look at on a wider level here. How do Turks understand their own history? How do they understand the multi-religious diversity of Turkey? How do they understand religious freedom? There are many brave people in Turkey who are advocating for these causes, but as a society, as a country, there are some pretty serious shortcomings. And as we think about what Turkey looks like after Erdogan, we don't want the next Turkish government to look at the remarkably low bar that's been set now and think that all we have to do is be a little bit more tolerant than Erdogan. That's not true. We actually need full religious freedom. We need full religious equality. And so if we focus too much on Erdogan, we are setting a very low bar. But we really need to set some really higher expectations, because if we don't do so, again, Christians are only 0.2% of Turkey's heritage today after being 20% a century ago. The current trajectory we're on is very concerning. And so we do need to act now to put into place real religious freedom in this country. That's the only way that we're going to be able to preserve the rich religious diversity that is native to it.
Much more to come in this policy briefing from In Defense of Christians on Turkey and a way forward for equality and religious freedom. It's taking place on Tuesday, June 15th, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we've got In Defense of Christians linked at sunrisemorningshow.com for listeners to get more information. Stephen Howard, thank you so much.